Hi there, and welcome to another episode of This is the Way of Humanities. This episode is going to be all about the Japanese poetry form known as haiku. You've probably heard about them before, you may have even written them. They're fairly simple things, so teachers like to use them. It's a great way to teach poetry because it is so simple. Essentially, a haiku is 3 lines, the first line being 5 syllables, the second being 7, and the third again being 5. Now, if that's all there were to it, I'd say, here's your homework, go and write some haiku. But there is more to it, so I'm going to teach you a bit of the background, and then you are going to have to write some haiku. But because of the background of haiku, it's going to be a little more complicated than just counting out 17 syllables and shimmying them into lines. So behind me on the whiteboard, yes, my tech is moving up. I have a haiku that is roughly based on an old Japanese haiku by a master named Basho. So what we have here is Road to Kyoto, 5 syllables. Spring heat and dust in the air, 7 syllables. And then this is the strange part. We've got dot dot dot. That's called an ellipses. It's a pause. Like if you use this in writing, it's generally the point of view narrator is taking a pause, thinking about something, and he's going to shift points of view, or he's just thought of something new to tell you. In this case, green bud on a branch. Another 5 syllables. So seems really simple, but that ellipses messes things up because what the poet was trying to tell us is about a moment in time, an experience that he had. He's walking along the road on his way to Kyoto, this big city. He's probably been walking all day. It's hot and dusty in the spring. The rains haven't fallen yet. He's exhausted. We can imagine that. And suddenly, in his exhaustion, he pauses, maybe wipes the sweat off his forehead, looks around, and he sees, oh, even though it's this hot, horrible spring, there's this beautiful green bud on the end of a branch. The rains are going to come, everything's going to green, life is going to go on. And this was kind of the point of haiku to the Japanese, was that if you've been told that haiku are all about nature, you're kind of right, but it's simplifying things. The element of nature is there to give us a period of time. So the Japanese would have some word in there like bud, and of course the really obvious one, spring, to tell us what season it was, so that we would know what point in time it is that the poet is looking at. Now, as modern readers and writers living in a city like Calgary, there's a lot of words that we could use that would tell people the season that wouldn't actually point to nature. If you're writing a poem about summer in haiku, all you've got to do is say construction. Everybody in Calgary, your parents especially, they've been driving down the roads, banging over potholes, spring, and finally the construction crews come out to cause delays, summer, and then the ice comes to stop the construction, fall and winter. If you are one of my wonderful students that is a hockey player, Duncan, I am looking at you. All you've got to do is say hockey, and immediately, boom, people's mind goes to winter. But even more than that, if you start saying tryouts, then they're immediately jumping to fall and the start of the hockey season. Baseball, Bodie, I know you and Mr. Pav are in on this one. Spring training, right? It's still winter here, but the minute somebody talks about camps, you're picturing spring down in the States and the start of the season. So those sports metaphors for us, we do have our own nature kind of ideas here in Calgary. All somebody has to do is say Canada Goose, and you immediately start to think of spring and fall. The geese are migrating. Everybody knows those V's of geese. mention goose poop on the grass, and you're very likely to think of Prince's Island Park and anywhere around the river during the summer when the geese have taken over the lawns. Not pleasant creatures either. Don't try and go near them or chase them away. Ugh, scary. So, like I say, with the Japanese writing at this time, they're wanting to place their poems in time. And so you'll see lots of poems that, yes, they're about nature, but they mention a type of bird or a type of flower that to people at the time they would say, oh, yes, I mean, he's obviously talking about summer. That's when that flower blooms. Or, oh, he must be speaking about fall because that's when the cormorants come by the waterfront. So you've got that. Why the big emphasis on that time? Because the author of a haiku is trying to share a moment that they've had with you, an experience in that moment. That experience is the exhaustion, but then seeing that tiny bud that reminds you, damn, life is pretty darn sweet. It's a beautiful thing. And if you pay attention to the world, there's many, many things that you can notice that are beautiful. There are other types of things that are less happy. You'll read haiku about winter, and it'll talk about, the ice melting and spring coming, and you think, oh, great, like a renewal, end of winter. But that element of winter and the ice is also saying that death is a real thing. So we've got a real emphasis on time, and we've got a real emphasis on noticing everything that you can about one moment. You're trying to use that bud to make the person imagine everything about your travel and experiencing spring. Why are you trying to convey so much? And there's two cultural aspects. In Japan, when you're looking from the 16 to the 1800s, when this form of poetry is huge, number one is a religious aspect. Zen Buddhism is huge in Japan at this time, especially among the samurai. It's a good way to live if you're a samurai. And Zen has a real emphasis on being completely in the moment. When you are standing in line waiting for a bus, or to pay at a grocery store, and you're scrolling through the phone, that's not being in the moment. Being in the moment is standing at the bus stop and observing the people around you, hearing the birds in the tree, being fully there. And there is a belief in Zen Buddhism that if you can